good catch. Yeah, so for our presentations, we're just going to be using VS Code to edit our code. But again, if you have a different IDE you want to use, go for it. So just go to this VS Code link and then download whichever one you need. Yeah, let's see. Okay, so once VS Code is downloaded, you're also going to want to set up this live server extension with VS Code. And this is going to help with that wireframing that we were talking about earlier. So go here, click install. Have I already installed this? Let's see.
Sorry, if that link didn't work, you can go to the little square icon in your VS Code.
This one?
No, sorry, not that square one, the bottom square one. Oh yeah, okay, so it is installed. Yeah, so that'll just help us open HTML pages directly from VS Code later. So very useful.
Cool. So yeah, let's see. So I guess in the chat, so like, let me know if you guys want me to slow down or if you guys are good. It's kind of hard gauging this on a virtual format. Okay. So the next step after setting up your code editor is installing Git. So sometimes Git comes like on your computer. So in order to check this, you want to pull up a terminal. How you do this is you can go to like Spotlight and just type in terminal and like open it up. In a Windows computer, I believe it's called command prompt. If you type in CMD, it'll come up. You open a terminal and you just want to type in Git. If you get something like this about all these different commands you can use with Git, Git is already set up and you're good to go. If you get like something like that, like command not found, then that means you need to download Git. I won't go into how to download it, but if it's a Mac, it's pretty straightforward. For Windows, it's a bit trickier, but there are instructions on how to do that here. And then after that, and again, let me know if you need me to slow down. And after getting Git set up, we want to create a GitHub account, which is where this repository is hosted. So again, follow the link, set up a GitHub account if you don't already have one. And then, let's see, I feel like I won't be able to walk through this because I already have it. So you can, so now we need to get our Git, what we downloaded in Git, like downloading Git on our computer set up with GitHub, and also set it up with our terminal or with VS Code if that's something you want to do. So the first thing is go back to your terminal, and we want to set up. So to set up Git with GitHub, you want to type in these commands. So you want to configure Git to know your username and your email. Your username is your GitHub username, whatever you use, and then your email is you want your email to be the one that you make your GitHub account with. So if you're not sure what you set up Git with, you can do git config global list, I believe. Yeah, and so you can see, you should be able to see your username and your email. Additionally, you don't have to do this, but I find that this makes using Git a lot easier, is that you can set up Git with VS Code. And so for that, you would type this command, and that will make it so that whenever Git needs to like pop up a window or you need to type in like the commit message or something like that, you won't have to like use Vim or Nano or something. You can use a code editor that you know. So yeah, let me open the chat. How's everyone doing? I know that was kind of a lot. Okay. If you can get in here. Oh, yes. So is this like to figure out if you have Git on your computer? Um, so like if you just type in Git, um, if you get a message like this, that means that Git is installed on your computer and it's like in your terminal, all that stuff, and you don't need to do anything. If you get a message that's like command not found, then that means you don't have Git installed on your computer, and you should follow the instructions here. Did I answer your question? Okay, cool. I guess just to get a gauge of where everyone's at, um, can you guys like raise your hands? Oh wait, or what to do? Go user. Oh, so here I'll do an example. So like it should be git config global user.name, and then you want to type in like your what's it called? Your like GitHub username. And then if you do git config global list, you should be able to see it there. Is it still not working? Okay, so just to get like a sense of where everyone's at, oh wait, not recognized.
Don't use the $sign. That's just.
Oh yeah, sorry, yeah. Don't use the $sign. The $sign is just like comes with, I don't know what to call it, the terminal. It just tells you that like you're on a new line. So like these $signs I'm not typing. They're just there in the terminal. Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that. I'm actually not used to using VS Code. So I'm sure some of you guys actually know more than me about this. I wonder if you do it through VS Code, if it'll download Git for you. Let's see. So I guess just to get a sense, if you guys, actually, never mind. Getting over setting up VS Code Git again. Okay. Oh, we haven't. Oh, that's this command here. So, and that's kind of. Oh wait. Did we do that yet? Oh, I forgot to go over the first step. Okay, so in order to set up VS Code with Git, you want to go to your VS Code, and then oh my goodness, there are so many. Okay, we're gonna throw that here, up here. Okay, so you want to go Command Shift P. Yes, you can also like go to help and type like command palette. You just want to go to the command palette. And then you want to type in like shell command install code command in path. So click that. It should set up. You should be able to set up VS Code with like your terminal. And then once that's done, you'll know that it worked because you'll be able to type code in your terminal, and it should like open VS Code. Once again, you go to command palette, it's Command Shift P, you type in shell command and you hit the install code command in path. And I believe that should set up everything for you. And I don't think it takes that long either. And so once that happens, then you can go into your terminal, put in this command, which is basically just setting up your core editor to be VS Code. Oh, did I spell this wrong?
I'm getting the same error message, so yeah.
This is working before just fine. Story of my life. Okay.
Might be because you've already done it. I don't know.
Maybe, but I was able to do it with a username and it was fine. Oh, I wonder. Google. With Git. See. Oh, I think this is not what I want. Oh, do I need the quotes? Oh, I think it's the equal sign. That might have been it. Okay, there we go. So that was my bad. I put a typo in there. So put in that command, and then that should make it work. Sorry about that, guys. I will update the GitHub repository after this. So I guess to get a sense of where everyone's at, you guys raise your hand if you guys, I guess, need more time, or type in the chat if you guys need more time. Okay, so if you guys need more help, we will have office hours if you're having trouble with these steps. But the next step is, after you get all this set up, is to clone the repository. And so how Git works is that there is your local repository, or there's the remote repository, which is this one on GitHub. And then there's one that is local, which is just on your computer. And those can be out of sync, and then you can sync them together with different Git commands. So what you want to do is go to the top of, I'll send the repo again. Top of the repo, we want to click this fork button. And then there we go. And then that should make sure you're logged into your GitHub account. But that should make your own version of, it's basically copying this repository. And so after you click fork, then you go to code here, and you want to copy this link. And then once you copy it, you go back to your terminal, and you're going to want to navigate to where you want to put this project. And so this is where you might have to learn a couple commands on how to navigate the terminal. So the first one that I feel like is helpful to know is ls. Oops, I'm typing in the wrong thing. Which lists all your like files and where you're at in your in the terminal. If you're on a Windows machine, I believe it's dir, and I'll do the same thing. So I want to put this in like this folder I have on my desktop. So in order to go into your desktop, you want to do cd, and you can type that in. And now we're in desktop. If you made a mistake and you want to go back, you can do cd ... and that'll just go back like one level in your like file system. You can also press tab and your computer will try to autofill, which has saved my life many times from like typing a million characters. And I want to go to projects. Okay, and I want to put my project in here. So what we want to do now is git clone, and then just paste that link in, and that should do all that. I believe if this is your first time using Git, you might have to type in a password for your GitHub account, although I'm not quite sure. And now, you do ls, you should see that your stuff is there. I'll wait a bit to see if anyone has any issues. Okay. Everyone seems good. Okay, so and now if you set up VS Code and your terminal, I think you can just type code and then this directory name, and it'll open it for you in your nice little window. If not, you can just navigate to where your project, or you can go to VS Code, do file, open, and like click on it and open it up. So now you should see all the files to start working on our website. So now I guess I'll go a little bit into using Git and just making sure that everything is set up right. So if you go to like the bare bones file and you click the index.html, you'll have just like very bare bones like HTML page. And so I think Angelina is going to have us do something a little different for how to open this, but the most simple way to open this and see what this web page looks like is just to navigate to where this page is. So you want to, in your terminal, go into your project, and then go to wherever that index.html file is. So that would be in bare bones. Yeah, so it's right here. And then you're just going to want to type open index.html, and you should see it pops up. Okay, so let's see. How do I paste the clone in desktop? So so if you fork the repository, go to this code button, and it should have the HTTPS link highlighted, and then click this button, which will copy it. And then if you go to your terminal, hold up. Okay, so this should be kind of where you're at. Type ls or dir if you're on a Windows computer, you want to, in order to navigate to like desktop or whatever file you have in here, you want to type CD and then a space and then the name of like your file or your directory. And then when you press enter, you should see that you are now in the desktop file. And then you can do this to wherever you like want to go. Okay. And then once you're in that like directory that you want to put your project in, then you want to do git clone, and then you want to paste that link in there. Let's see, are there any questions, anything you guys need help on? Okay, so I think, yes, so once again, navigate to the, to like the bare bones directory, and you want to do open index.html, and that'll open just like the web page. So this will be what we'll be editing, but just to kind of practice saving stuff and to Git and committing stuff. Oops, don't want that one. So you'll see that right now it's displaying hello world. You can, I don't know, change this to be like hello Emma or whatever. So in VS Code, you have to make sure you save your stuff. It does not auto-save for you. So if you're like, why aren't my changes showing up? Make sure you saved your file. So make sure you do Command S to save. And then if you go here, you just refresh, you'll see that it has changed. And then, so you're like, you're done for the day, or you want to like push your changes is what you call it. You want to push your changes to your GitHub repository, your remote GitHub repository. Then you want to go back to your main project folder. So if you're in bare bones and you want to go back one, you do cd ... And so this is where we can kind of see all of our changes in Git. So you'll do Git, we'll start with Git status. And in that we can see that we have modified this one file. So now it says hello Emma instead of hello world. And now in order, this can get a bit complicated, but essentially in Git there are stages. So this is, you want to first add your files and then you want to commit them. So you can do this by doing git add. Now, if you only want to add, like you only want to like push one file and not, if you had like a bunch of files but you only really wanted to save one of them, then you would do git add like that file, like that file name, like that. But if you don't care and you just want to add all of them, you can do git add dot, and that'll add all of your files. So when you type in git status again, you should see that it is green, which means that it's ready to be committed. They're staged to be committed. And so committing your changes is like saving your changes in Git, even though your changes are already like saved locally on your computer. So to commit your changes, that means that you're going to save only the green files. So you do git commit. If you set up VS Code with your terminal, you can just type in git commit and you're good to go. And here you can type your commit message. Put something helpful there. I just am not creative right now. You can type like what changes you made. If you're working with people, you can like kind of explain your thought process, but this is just your own website, so you can kind of put whatever you want. And then you close that, and then you should see that one file changed, all that stuff, your commit message. If you type git commit and like some weird thing popped up and it's like, it says you probably like Vim or Nano popped up, type like :Q or something to get out of it. It's a rough time. But if you didn't set up VS Code with your terminal, then you can do git commit, and then you want to do -m, which kind of marks whatever comes after it as your commit message. You can type something like that, and this will do the same thing. So it would be like that. And I believe these commands are also on the README. Let's see. Oh yeah, it's this stuff here. Cool. So once your changes are committed, you can actually see this by doing git log. You can see all these lovely changes that I've made, and then all of us are making before, to get this repository ready. To exit out of this, just type Q. Oops, Q. And then we're ready to. So right now, so I have this change on my local repository, but over here, let's see, where can I see the commits? Oh my goodness, this looks very different than what I remember GitHub looking like. Oh, let's see. Ooh, okay. So you want to make sure that you are in the hack day. Like hack day 2021 is the last thing on your like list of files. If you go into like, if you're in like the bare bones one and you do git status, it'll, oh, never mind. I guess you can do that. You just want to but you want to make sure you're in like the project repository. Yeah, because if you're in like projects and you do like git status, like this is not a project that I have set up with Git, so it'll give me that message. So you want to navigate to the hack day folder, so like CD hack day, and you should get there. Ooh, I didn't know that. See, I'm learning new stuff every day. Wait, will this? I feel like that's. Oh, I think this is dependent on where you put the project.
It's like if you're in like some other directory structure, it'll like take you back to like users Emma. The tilde represents users Emma, and then like whatever you want. So it like always works. It doesn't matter. It's fine. We don't need.
Okay. And then there we go. So how's everyone doing so far? Okay, and then so now that our changes have been committed, the last thing we want to do is git push, or wait, I was gonna show something, except I couldn't find where the commits are on this. How do I see commits? Oh my goodness. Oh, there we go. I clicked the commits thing. So as you can see, my commit isn't here, even though it's over here. So in order to sync my local repository with the remote repository, I want to type git push, and that should give me all this stuff. And then if I refresh this and Git has a good, yeah, you can see it here. There's a chance you guys might get some errors about like setting an upstream, let me know if you get that and I can try to help you with that. But when I set this up, I didn't need to do, you'll probably need to just type this command if you're getting an error saying something about an upstream or whatever. But when I set this up, I didn't get that, surprisingly. So we may not need to do that. Yeah, so that's pretty much it for setup. So we can, there we go. So I will be in the office hours call if you guys need extra help setting things up. If you're still on like step 1, that's totally fine. I'll make sure to help you guys with that. But yeah, welcome to Website Hack Day. Make sure you guys join the Slack workspace, and you guys can post your questions there as well. You get extra help even after the event in there, and then you can also like share what you're making. I love seeing what everyone makes. So yeah.
And so to start off, I'm going to show you guys a bunch of like eBoards websites and some other fun ones, just so you guys can get some inspiration for what you might want your own websites to look like. This is Brittany's, our lovely web chair. She has the sticky header, which is really cool. I think it jumps to different sections in a one-page scroll. This is mine. It also like has projects that you can like click into, and an about page. Yeah, and then this is Emma's. Very cool, has the info on the left and kind of the scrolling right side panel. This is Rachel's, treasurer of Newit. Super cute header up here. And then this is fun, like having interests and to connect. I really like that. And then this is someone else that I know.
Oh, wait, we should record this. Wait, is it still recording?
We are recording. We're still recording.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Yeah, again, like there's a sticky header. She put her photography on there. You can put like whatever you want to show. It doesn't all have to be CS. Let's see. This, I don't think she coded this. This is a designer, but I think this is super sick. It just looks really nice and clean. And I wanted to show you guys the about page too, because I think she has a pretty cool like layout for her about page. She has her like intro, you know, contact, and then like, this isn't really applicable to us right now maybe, but just a cool way to organize things. Yeah, and then this is a really clean one-page school site. More of a developer site. You can see like he lists the technologies that he likes using, jobs, coursework, projects, and then I think this is really cool. There's a take me back up button, so that's very like user friendly. And then this one is also cool. So this one uses a bit of JavaScript to kind of get this effect. And then you can see she has like web developer, interaction designer, artist. And so like you can kind of click different aspects of what she does and then filter her projects. So it's a neat layout. Like definitely don't have to get so fancy right away because this is like requires a bit more tinkering to do, but it's cool to like know what you can eventually do if you want to. So that being said, now I'm gonna talk about wireframing and kind of how you can begin to plan your sites. Maybe you have some ideas already from looking at those, or like you know what you want to do, but it's always really great to make a wireframe so you just have a visual of what you're trying to achieve right away before you even start coding. So we're gonna go through like what wireframing is, kind of some examples, and then I'm going to switch to Figma and do a little demo, and then share some more resources. So a wireframe essentially is a visual layout or visual outline of your web page's layout. So it helps you plan before you code, and you can also like make several different versions of your website if you want to experiment, like much quicker than you would be able to if you're coding everything. So it's a really great tool to help you like in your early ideation processes to go faster and kind of try out a bunch of different things in a very low risk way without wasting too much time, like thinking about how to code everything. And so to give some examples, there's kind of, you can go low fidelity to high fidelity. And so low fidelity is like very kind of low detail, placeholder images, placeholder text, just getting the layout of your website down. And I think that's like really good for just planning out your site and kind of without going into too much detail at first, like without getting wrapped up in detail. And then you can keep iterating and maybe add in color and like more design elements. Like you can see here, these were some I made. And at first I was just getting like the structure down, and then later adding in these design details like the little wave, the colors, the styling, that kind of thing. And then, but you don't have to like do this whole process for today, because we're, you know, trying to like make a website in a day. So feel free to start either low fidelity or high fidelity right away. Like this is just for you to plan. So do whatever you feel like would make you most successful. This is all like to help with coding. So like you don't have to worry too much about like, does my wireframe look perfect? Because the wireframe is essentially like a plan in service of your code, not like the final product. So yeah, now we're gonna go to Figma. So if you guys can open, oh, I'm already signed in, figma.com, I'll send it in the chat. And yes, the workshops are recorded. So if you guys can sign up for Figma, that would be great. And then I'll give everyone a minute to do that, and then I'm gonna go through how to make a Figma board. And also this PowerPoint is linked in the README. Probably should have said this earlier, but so if you ever need to go back to it, I put in like the steps that I'm gonna go through for setting up Figma in the PowerPoint too. So like you can refer to it later if you need. Cool. So does anyone need more time signing up for Figma? Let me know in the chat or unmute yourself. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and get started. So once you log into Figma, you might already be on a board, but if you aren't, you can go into the plus arrow on the left, say create file, and then you have your file. And to start, you want to make some frames. So click the little grid tool over here. A frame is basically like your canvas for your wireframe. So you want to make one that's desktop sized and also mobile sized. We're gonna talk about mobile a little bit like throughout the day, but it's always good to make your website be able to look nice on both a desktop screen, like a large horizontal screen, as well as a vertical, like smaller mobile screen, because you don't know like what kind of device people will be viewing your site on. And so it's just good to cover both cases. And so if you're selecting you have selected the frame tool, there's on the right panel, you'll see all these preset options. So if you go into desktop, you can click desktop, and then that'll just give you a nice desktop size frame. And then if you do that again, you can pick a phone frame. So I'm just going to do that. And then you have your 2 frames. And then from here, there's a lot of different, Figma has a lot of different tools for you to add like different elements. You can experiment, but basically there's a lot of shapes you can add. You can add text. And so like if I wanted to make a header that was like, I don't know, my work, and then you can change the text size. And then another one that's like about me, for example, and then that could be my header. So you can play around with like adding different shapes, like maybe you want to add a photo there, so you can put a little block to as a placeholder. And then a really cool thing you can do is if you want to preview how this frame would look full screen, kind of actual size, you can select the frame and then there's this play button in the right corner, and you click that, it'll bring you to another page with a preview view of your wireframe. So you can kind of use this to check like, oh, does the sizing of elements look right? Like, is my font size too big, too small? Like, just right, and then kind of adjust as you go. And if you click on elements, you can see like their width and height, which is helpful because then you can very easily like translate that same size to HTML CSS. And so it makes it a lot easier to like have a goal and know what you're doing kind of beforehand. So yeah, that's basically it for the demo. Like, I think it'll just be better if you guys have time to experiment with this yourselves. Does anyone have any questions so far? Okay, feel free to drop them in the chat if you do, but I think there's a couple more. Oop, okay, actually. Yeah, there's a couple more slides I want to go through. This is all like on the slides. But yeah, so overall tips for wireframing. I would say focus on like the bigger picture, kind of where you want your layout elements to go. And then obviously look for inspiration in like other sites. There's a lot of UI elements that kind of pop up over and over and are popular kind of elements to have on a portfolio website, like for example, a nav bar linking to different pages, like maybe pages. It's internet connection is unstable. I'm so sorry if that becomes a problem. But yeah, so definitely look at what people are doing and what looks cool because you can do it too. And yeah, just try a bunch of layouts in this stage because this is your chance to like have fun and have fun always, but this is your chance to like experiment without really like anything holding you back. Like, you don't have to commit to anything yet, so it's a good time to do that. And so I linked some sites for website inspiration here, UI elements that are common, and also designing for accessibility. That means like making sure the contrast ratio of your site is readable, including alt text. There's a lot of good things to read about in here, so I encourage you to read that. And yeah, have fun wireframing. Let me know if that made sense, if you want me to go over anything else, or if you have questions. Cool, so welcome to the HTML CSS workshop portion of Website Hack Day. Nice, okay, I just saw, is this big enough for everyone? Okay, cool. I think I'm just gonna leave it for now, but let me know. But we're gonna go through the repo together and change some things. So feel free to like pull up the repo that we just cloned, the bare bones Hack Day 2021 repo. And for this workshop, we're gonna be looking at the files in the bare bones folder. So you'll notice there's two of them. Britt's gonna go through Bootstrap later. So for now, we're just gonna focus on the index.html and the styles.css in bare bones. So right now I have index.html open. We already looked at this with Emma briefly, but basically HTML is a language that helps you define the structure and the content of a web page. So an HTML document consists of a bunch of HTML elements, and each element typically has, if we look at this hello world line here, it has an opening tag, and the type of the tag is H1 in this case. That stands for header 1, and then the content of the element is in between, and then we have a closing tag with the same name but with a slash in front. And the content of between your HTML tags can be another HTML element. So for example, right here, the body tag, the content in between the body tag is actually this H1 hello world element. So elements can be nested, and you can kind of organize your document into different sections and structure it with nested tags. So before I get super deep in the weeds with like the tags, I want to go over the overall layout of this page. So this doc type HTML part at the top just tells the browser like, this is an HTML document, render it as an HTML document, so you expect that. And then everything else is between these two HTML tags. And then within that, there's two sections, the head section and the body section. So the head section contains all the metadata that the browser needs to render your page correctly, but for the most part, you don't see this stuff on the page. Like earlier when Emma opened this page, we only saw hello world because the body section is like the part that you would actually see. Any content that you want to show up on your page goes in between the body tags. But the head tag does have useful stuff, like defines the character set. This line kind of tells, make sure your site is able to like display correctly on mobile and desktop. And then this title part is actually the label that you see on a tab when you open a new tab. So let's change this now into like your name. So I'm going to change it to Angelina Hahn. And then the way that, the reason I had you guys download Live Server was because it's really easy to open an HTML page with Live Server. So if you right click the file name on the left here and then hit open with Live Server, it will open your browser directly with your page. And then let me just, yeah, so you can see here this change was applied. And it's now Angelina Hahn in the tab, or whatever you put in it. And you can, Live Server kind of automatically updates the HTML page in your browser when you save. So for example, if I change this into hello new it and then saved, it changes for you here. So you don't have to like refresh it or do any of that, which is pretty cool. So yeah, that's what the title is for. And then the description is what you would see under, if you search a site in Google, you see like the little gray description underneath. That's what that is. And then you can also put your name for the author field. And then this link part is really important because this tells the browser where to find the CSS styles for this page. So without CSS, with just plain HTML, our website would look really boring. Like this is all like black text default styling, but with CSS, we can change the font color, the background color, kind of do fancier layouts with our elements, and a bunch of other things. So in order to bring like design into our web pages, we want to include CSS. And so this link here in the head tags just tells the browser, okay, I'm referring, this is my style sheet, and the href, like the link to the style sheet is called styles.css. And since we have a folder, or sorry, a file in the same folder called styles.css, we can refer to it directly by name in this file. So this line is basically telling the browser in the same folder, look for a file named styles.css, and that is the style sheet. Does anyone have questions so far before we keep going? Cool. So I'm going to talk about a couple of the tags now. So I mentioned earlier, like several different, or so many actually, different types of HTML tags. H1 is one of them. It's like the default styling is this like pretty big text. There's also P, which stands for paragraph. So we wanted to add a P just to see like this is a paragraph. And then go here. Wait, is this browser big enough for you guys to see? Okay, hopefully that's big enough. Yeah, so you can see that like the paragraph is smaller than the heading because of the type of tag it is. There's also, where's my VS Code? Some other tags of note. There's an image tag where you can give it a file name and it'll render an image for you. We'll do that a little later. And there's something called a div, which is basically like a way to organize your page into different sections. So the div doesn't actually like render anything. It's just a container for to group like a couple of different elements together, but it can be really useful later when we look at CSS and kind of if you want to style a group of elements in the same way, the div is really helpful to organize that. So actually, this is a good segue into CSS. So basically, in order to add CSS to our page, we're going to want to select an element with a rule like a selector and give it some attributes like color or font family. And so there's a couple different ways to select elements. The most general way, or like least, just one of the ways, is to select it by the name of the element. So if we switch to the CSS file, right now it's empty, but we can say for everything that's inside the body, between the body tags, make the color, which is the text color, blue. And then maybe make the background color Alice blue. There's some predefined colors that exist, or you can do like a hex code color yourself. And so if we go back to our browser, everything has a blue background and like bright blue text as well. And then we can also get more specific. If we go back to index.html, let's say we wanted to change just the header to be a different color. So we could say h1 curly brace, and then color is pink. And then h1 is now selected in pink. And one note about, let me talk about classes first, and then I'll talk about another thing. So let's say we have two different H1s. This one is hello, this is another H1. And so right now, if we look, both of these H1s are pink because the rule that we applied in CSS just says, if anything is an H1, make it pink. But if we wanted to make this one, the second H1, have a different color or any sort of different styling, like we want to be able to differentiate between different elements of the same type. And so what we can do is we can add a class or an ID to an element to like identify it with in CSS. So here we can say inside the opening tag, we can say class equals and then quotation mark, second H1. Or you could say ID. I think the main difference between the two is that ID needs to be unique on a page, so you can't have more than one with the same name, or but class you can reuse a bunch of times. So I like to use class just because if you like define, let's say you make a class that turns text magenta, then you can, if you want a different piece of text to be magenta later on, you can just actually reuse the same class. So it can help save you some code. So, okay, we named this second H1, and now we can go into styles.css, and then to tell this that it's a class, you say dot second H1, and then you can give it a different rule. So you can say color magenta, and then maybe we want a different font family. So we can do Warrior New. I'm gonna go with what they suggested. And then this is your font family name, and then these are kind of backups in case it can't find that one. And these, there's a bunch of like pre-built-in fonts. VS Code should kind of auto-suggest some for you, but you can also import fonts, which if we have time, we can go over a little later. So now, if we go back here, second H1, is a completely different style because we were able to select it and apply separate styling to it. So one thing about CSS classes is you may have noticed that a bunch of these rules actually apply to this second H1. Like, it's part of the body. It also is an H1 tag, but it also has a class. So sometimes it can get confusing, like which one is more specific, which rule actually like overrides all the other rules, because clearly the class one is like the one being applied, but like why isn't H1 styling being applied? So there's a little diagram in the README that I want to show that Britt put in, very helpful. So this is basically kind of how how specific the selectors are. So the most general selectors will always be overridden by the more specific selectors. So you can see like an ID would override a class, but a class overrides an element. So in this case, since this is an element selector and this is a class, then the class is more specific. So that's why this styling gets applied. And there's like a more technical way to count it with points, but I think overall, like you can read more about it in the README if you're interested, but like in practice, kind of just remembering which selectors are more powerful than the other ones helps a lot. So does that make sense so far? And does anyone have questions? Okay, I'm going to keep going, but feel free to like interrupt at any time to ask stuff, because I'm just gonna code and kind of talk, and then yeah, so like feel free to jump in. So now I'm actually gonna make a little like about section on the homepage with an image and some text, just to show you guys a couple different ways to use common HTML tags and also use a little bit of styling as well. So I'm gonna take out let's see, I am going to, let's just take this whole thing out. Okay. Start fresh. Also one thing about CSS, like if something isn't applying, check if you spelled it right, because I often, like more often than I would like to admit, like misspell one tiny little thing and then the CSS class will not apply. So something to note. Maybe you're better at spelling than I am though, so maybe that won't happen to you. But okay, so let's say I want to make a page with an image and then some about text. I think I actually made a wireframe that looks similar. Oops. Yeah, so my goal is kind of to make this part in the middle, like picture and then a heading and some description. So to start, I am going to get an image, and you can drop your image directly into the bare bones folder. You want, like, to keep it simple, just keep it in the same folder as your index.html for now. And you can just kind of drag and drop it into the folder. Like if you navigate You can do it either in VS Code or like navigate to where it is in your folder structure and just drop it in right here. And so now I have my image. I am going to make an image tag. And the image tag is one of the only tags in HTML that doesn't require a closing tag. So you can do everything in the opening tag. And so to make the image show up, you need to give it a source. So that is src equals quotation mark. And then you want to type in the name of the file or the image that you just put in. So I put in the strawberries.jpg, like that. And then it's always good practice to include alt text. So alt text is what screen readers will read. It's a short but specific description of what your image shows. And so it's, screen readers will read it, and it'll also show up if your image can't be loaded for some reason. Like if I spelled this with JPEG without an E, for example, it wouldn't be able to find the image, and so it would just show the alt text. So it's good to have for accessibility. And so I'm going to describe this as a pair of hands holding a bunch of red strawberries. Cool. So, and then I also want to add an H1 that says, hi, I'm Angelina, and then some P text like, this is my website for Site Hack Day. So yeah, we have all our elements now. So I'm going to take a look at what it looks like in the browser. Okay, so this is good. We have all our info, but it looks pretty ugly. The image is way too big. I don't like the styling of this, so I'm going to use CSS to change it. So I'm going to give the image a class called main image, and then maybe I'll give the H1 a class called main H1, and then the P class called description. And then in my CSS, I will make classes for all the classes that I just put in my HTML. So main image, main H1, and description. Okay, so for the image, I want it to be smaller, actually. Or, you know what, to start off, what I'm going to do for organization is wrap this whole thing in a div. So what that will help me do is I can now use the div to help me style all of these tags in a certain way. So sorry that sounds vague. I will get into like the layout. Sorry, I meant layout. The div will help me lay out these tags in a certain way because they're all grouped into the same div. And so I will get into that in a second. But I'm going to give the div a class. just in the meantime. And so going back to styles, I'm going to give the image a width of maybe 400 pixels. There's a couple different ways you can size images. You can either give it like a one amount in pixels, or you can give it a percentage. And then it would be the percentage of whatever outer class it is in. So if I gave this main image a percentage of 30, let's say, it would be 30% of the container's width. And the container right now is like goes all the way across is 100%. So that makes it a little bit more flexible. If the screen size, oops, not 300. If the screen size changes, then it'll still be like 30%. You can see it going smaller. So that's a little bit more flexible. So cool. I am happy with that. Maybe I want to give this one a font color of red, and then this one a font color of blue. That didn't do anything. Okay. Oh no, it's color. My bad. That's not font color. Cool. So that looks like that. And now I want to try to get this text part to be in the same line as the strawberry image. And so that's where the div comes in handy, because I can, if I make a class for the div in CSS, so class.container is what I called it earlier. There's a value called display, and it setting the display of a element kind of tells the elements nested inside it, its child elements, how to be arranged. So since the container is referring to this div, if I give it a display value, that'll tell its children, which are all of these tags, how to arrange themselves. And so there's a couple different values for display. I think block, inline, and flex, I feel like are pretty common. Block means that every child will be a block and take up like a new line, and kind of span all the way across that new line if it can. And that's like the default. And then inline means that the children will kind of try to go to the same line, I think. And then flex gives you a little bit more flexibility in terms of what direction you want your children to like arrange themselves in. That all sounds very vague, but I guess showing an example will probably make more sense. I personally prefer flex for a lot of things. I think it gives you, well, it gives you flexibility, but to kind of arrange things to be in the way that you want them to be. So flex, once you set display flex, there's another attribute that you can set called flex direction. And so what flex will do is it'll try to put all of the elements, the child elements, in the same line. But you can tell it whether to put it in the same line in a row or put it in the same line in a column. So the default is row, but basically it will, well, we can look and see. So it puts everyone in the same row, which is kind of what we want. But if you change it back to column, it'll like treat the axis as going like down in a column instead, and it'll stack everyone in a column. I'm gonna pause for questions because I know that was a lot. So let me know if that made sense.
We'll also be going over like more flex stuff and going a little more in detail in the Bootstrap workshop. So if you're confused about flex, don't worry about it for now.
Yeah. How to change font? Yes, that's a good question. Yeah, so we can actually do that now. Basically, you use font family, and then VS Code should kind of give you some options that are preloaded. You can also add Google Fonts as to your files if you want. I don't know, Britt, were you planning to go over that later, or we could go over that now?
We can go over it now.
Okay, cool. So let me just pull up Google Fonts actually. Google Fonts, I'll send it in the chat, is awesome because there's all these fonts and you can use them for free. So you can definitely browse. Let's just go with this one for now, just to show how to export it. Okay, so dismiss. You can, once you pick a font, you say like, there's this button, select this style, and then it'll kind of give you a little code snippet here to add the font to your file. So you can just copy that. Let's see. And then I think you put it in here, but I could be very wrong because I haven't done this in a while. So you would copy paste the link to the font inside the head tag of your HTML. And then there's sign mono is the name. So then in the CSS, you can copy paste the name. And then, oops, let's see if that does anything. Yay, it worked. Okay. So yeah, you can basically do that with any font in Google Fonts. Is just like select, and then it gives you code. The stuff that looks like HTML goes in the HTML file, and then this stuff would go, the CSS stuff would go in your CSS class.
I think on Google Fonts, you can also like add and like select multiple fonts, and it'll just create a link that, like one link that has all the fonts that you need. So you don't need to copy and paste a separate link tag for every single font you use. I would suggest like decide beforehand all the different fonts you want, add them all, and then just copy one link.
Yeah, that's a good point. So yeah, it's like you can kind of see it adding all of these fonts into the same, into like one URL. So that's a really good point. Cool. Let's see, going back to index. Okay. So for the sake of time, let's see what we can do. To get this text kind of treated, to group these two together, because I want these two still like stacked one after another in column, but the whole entire container outside of it is stacking them by row. So I'm just gonna add another div around just the text to make that be treated as one chunk. So now this container div is just going to stack the image and this whole div as in row form, but the stuff inside this div will still be stacked in column form, like that. And then I want to talk about margin and padding briefly. So these two are pretty close together. I want them to have some space. So I'm going to add a class to the text div, call it text. And then in CSS, I'm going to add a background color just so we can see what's happening. But if I add let me add a padding first. So I can add a padding of 50 pixels or 30 pixels. That's going to give me 30 pixels of space all around. But you can see that it's space between the inside elements of the div and the outer edge of the div. So it's not actually adding space between the div itself and other elements. It's adding space inside the div to make the outside of the edge of the div farther away from the children. So we added padding to text. So now there's like a border around these children of 30 pixels. But if we wanted to move the whole chunk 30 pixels away from all the other elements, we would want to do a margin. So now you can see there's more space between this whole piece and the image. And then I think this is a good time to show you guys developer tools in Chrome. So if you right click in Chrome and hit inspect, you get this window where you can kind of see a lot of like see your CSS and experiment. Ooh, that looks ugly. And figure out what's going on. So you can see here, if you select this square with a little arrow thing in the right panel, and then hover over this text div, the green is the padding and the orange is the margins. So yeah, that's useful to look at. You can also, let's see, click one of these elements and then you can see the CSS being applied right here. So this is a good way to debug CSS. Like if you want something, if you expect an element to have a certain style, but you aren't seeing it show up, you can kind of like go into the element and see exactly what's being applied. And you can actually change stuff right from here. If you want to experiment, like you can uncheck the color. Pretty sure you can, yeah, type in a color too. So you can do that just to, like, if you want to make some quick changes to see what things would look like. This is not permanent though. So if like once you have mucked around in the browser, you would want to go back into VS Code and actually apply those changes to your code if you want to make them permanent. Because now if I refresh, like it goes back to the way it was in VS Code. And then another really cool thing about developer tools is you can see how your site would look in different screen sizes. So in next to like this icon that we just clicked, there's another one that looks like two like devices, rectangles stacked together. If you click that, it'll take you here, and then you can see, you can change the screen size of stuff. So that's what it would look like on tablet, on mobile, tiny mobile, small. So as you can see, the picture gets all messed up on mobile if we have them like going in a row like this, because this is still 30%, and so it's just, it gets really scrunched. And so what I want to do is create a different set of rules for when the screen size is under a certain limit. So when it's on mobile like this, I think it would look nicer if the image was spanning all the way across, because there's not a lot of space, and if this text dropped down underneath. So we can do that by using something called media queries in CSS. So if we go back to styles.css, we can say the syntax is at media, and then max dash width paren max dash width colon, and then you give it a pixel value for your width. So I feel like 480 is a decent mobile size. And then under here, you would give a new set of rules for what you want the browser to show, like what styling you want to be applied when it's less than this amount. So I would say for the main image class, make the width 100% instead of 30%. And then for the container, which is the thing that's wrapping all around them, I want the flex direction to be column instead of row when it's under this screen size. So going back to our window, now you can see it, since the screen size is 425, the image spans all the way across, and we are flexing on the column instead of the row. Does that make sense so far? And you can see, yeah, like when it changes, when it hits 480, it changes like that. Yeah.
How do we get to this view of like being able to change the size?
Yeah, so you can toggle it using, you have to be in developer tools, which you get to with inspect, right click inspect, and then you click this two rectangles icon that says toggle device bar.
This is very helpful. I didn't know that we could do this.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Is this just in Chrome?
It is in Chrome. I think you can do it in Safari too, but it's like a little bit more difficult.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and like I think all browsers have some form of this, but everyone I talk to prefers the Chrome one. So.
Yeah.
But websites look different in different browsers too, so
yes,
we won't cover it in this workshop. But if you develop your website in like Chrome and then you open it in like Safari, sometimes it looks kind of whack, and there are like ways to get around it and to fix it, but that is something to keep in mind.
Yeah, definitely. Always good to test in different browsers. Oops, there are questions in the chat. I feel like, oh no. Nice. Change the URL of our website. Yeah, so I think Emma's gonna go over like pushing your website to a URL in a little bit, but I'm not sure if you can change the URL, how much you can change the URL in GitHub Pages, because I think that's, yeah, I'll let you answer that.
Yeah, we're gonna go over later how to push it to GitHub Pages, but then that URL will just be, I think it would just be like github.com and then / the repo name. But if you wanted to have a custom domain like BrittanyChen.com, that you're going to have to buy your own domain name. And there is a way to link it to GitHub Pages, and you can definitely research that on your own, but we won't be going through that today.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and then when we're all done with this, after setting up GitHub Pages, I'll try to put like a link to how to potentially set up like your own URL with GitHub Pages.
Okay, thank you. There's
also something called Netlify that you can connect to a Git repo, and Netlify I've found is really, really easy to set up with your own URL. Like they have good documentation on it. So if anyone's interested, I can also like send a few references on Netlify. That's what I use to like with my own website, like setting it to be angelinahan.com instead of like a default URL. So that's another resource that you can look into. Yeah.
How can we find the default URL to like look how it would look on like a website, an actual website, like how you did it?
Like, so at the end, if you scroll down in the README, you'll see kind of like instructions on how to set up your website with GitHub Pages. But the URL for that would be like your GitHub username.github.io. Yeah, this is my website, and so it would look like that. And so I'm fine with that. Like I feel cool with having GitHub in my URL, but if you don't like it, then you can get a different domain name and set it up so that's different.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. So I think for the sake of time, we're gonna stop here with demos and let everyone have a lunch break. But like feel free to code, like experiment with things on your own. There's a bunch of resources in the README of the GitHub repo that has links to like common HTML tags that you can use, like some CSS styling tricks. And then there's also a tutorial to a navbar, which I have found really useful. So I can send those links as well. But yeah, there's a site. Actually, I'll just show you guys really quick. There's W3 Schools is a really, really great site for learning CSS and HTML. There's, okay, I just sent it in the chat, but there's a lot of tutorials for like different components you can build. So honestly, if you like know what you want to build, like let's say, I don't know, you want to make a gallery of images or something. If you Google like image gallery, HTML, CSS, usually like some tutorial will pop up and you'll be able to follow it. And a lot, W3 Schools have a lot of those. And so it's just a good resource to look at while you're coding. Yeah, and I feel like a lot of this is like kind of, especially with CSS, a lot of it is like guess and check a little bit almost. Like you might think that something will work a certain way, but it doesn't actually work the way you want it to, and you have to like try a different way. So like don't feel discouraged if you're kind of flipping back and forth between the code and Chrome to like trying a bunch of different things. That's totally like a valid way to do it. Yeah. Yeah, does anyone else have any other questions? We're here to help with like debugging or anything. So yeah, hit us up. Yeah, I can definitely push the code to, let's see, am I on the main repo? I think I am.
Maybe push it to a different branch.
Yeah, I can push it. You're right. Okay.
Yeah.
Check out the
Okay, I'm gonna stop the recording, and then the second round in the afternoon, I will just start a new recording.
All right, so is that text size good for everyone? All right. So there is a Bootstrap folder that should be in your files, and we're going to be using the index HTML and the style CSS that's in the Bootstrap folder. So everybody go there. So there's no difference between like the bare bones one and this one, except this one has some imports that are required for Bootstrap. But let me first go over what Bootstrap is. Okay, so this is, oh, what the, okay. So Bootstrap is basically a front-end open source toolkit, and it's really useful. It helps you create responsive sites, which means it'll help your site kind of be like mobile friendly, tablet friendly, and help you organize elements so that you can change the layout depending on your device. But not only that, it also has a responsive grid system, which we'll be going over later, which helps you lay out your elements. And there's also a lot of pre-built components, web components that you can kind of copy and paste into your own website and use those features, which we'll also go over later. So that's what Bootstrap is. And then, so back to the index file, we have some things here that are required for Bootstrap to work. And basically, Bootstrap has a lot of predefined classes, a lot of predefined JavaScript functionality. And so this is basically just importing their functionality so that you can use it in your thing. Okay, so any questions so far? Feel free to like cut me off or put it in the chat if you have any questions along the way. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to go over is this grid system. So the grid system, basically, it separates everything into 12 columns, and it's based on columns and rows. So yeah, so the first thing you're going to need to do when you're using the Bootstrap grid system is you're going to need a container. So in this example here, you just need a container to wrap everything inside of it. And typically you'll just need one container to wrap around your entire HTML. And then, so a row is basically just a row in your container. And this will all make more sense when we go through the demo, but just bear with me for now. And then the columns is where it gets interesting. So there are 12 columns that break up each row, and you can designate the size or width of your element by specifying how many columns you want it to take up out of those 12. So we'll just do an example. Oops. So I'm gonna create my container. My row. Okay, so I have a couple predefined colors here because because I wanted to make it clear where the columns are. So I have, let me rename these actually. I'll just name this green. Green, red, yellow. All right, cool. So I'm going to make this one green, red. Oh, my bad. Then a yellow one. So when you see a, when you just put call without anything else, it will evenly divide the width inside your row. So my row is basically taking up the whole screen at the moment, and so it'll break that width up into 3 different columns. And so let me just show you what that looks like. I'll just put some text here so it's easier to tell. Okay, so save that. And then I have the live thing here. Oops. Wait, this live share is not working. Okay, there we go. All right, so as you can see, this, okay, let me open developer tools. It might be easier to demonstrate. So as you can see, my row is basically taking up this entire width, and these 3 columns have been evenly split into my row. And let me make this clearer. All right, so you can see that the row is like this at the moment. And so because I didn't specify any number of columns that I want this column to take up, it just splits all of them evenly. But we can also define how many out of the 12 columns we wanted to take up. So say I wanted this green one to take up half the width of my row. And these are all proportional to the parent container, in which case is the row. So if I was to make the row take up only half of the screen, then if I make the column take up 6 columns, then it'll take up a quarter of the screen, if that makes sense. So because there's 12 columns, if I do want a column to take up half of the screen, I'll put col 6. And then if you are going to do this number system, you should do it like evenly and consistently across all of the columns, and you want them to add up to 12. So I'm just going to put 4 and 2 here. Okay, so now this has changed. And open this up. So row's still the same, but now you can see the col 6 has taken up half of the row. This one took up 4/12, and this one took up 2/12. Any questions so far? Okay, cool. So that is how the grid system works. Yeah, so you can feel free to play around with that. This makes it really easy because if you do change the size of your window, you can see that these columns have changed with it. And so this is what makes it so easy to make your sites responsive, because you don't have to specify like exactly how much space you want it to take up. And everything is based on this column system. Okay, so now we're gonna move on to Flex. And so flex is kind of, it is one of the display options you can use. I think by default, everything is in block display, which means that it kind of just takes up the whole row. And so you want to use flex when you kind of want things to, I guess, be more flexible and maybe like wrap around and all that fancy stuff. So say that I wanted to have these wrap around when I make this smaller. And actually, Bootstrap has a class defined that'll make your display flex for you. So if you put dflex, that is the same thing as doing row display flex, but that's something that they've defined for you so that you can save yourself some CSS. So if I get rid of this, that is also okay. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to, let's see. So I'm actually not going to make that one flex. I'm going to put some elements into, let's put it into this guy, column 1. Let's just say, and I'm just going to call this, let's just call it block. So I'm going to give the block a size. That's probably too big. Let's see what that looks like for now. Okay, see, so in times like this, when you're like, why is my div not showing up? Developer tools is really useful. Oh, I think I might have missed a tag or something. Oh, no, I just didn't put a height. All right, so I'm gonna move this to height. Cancel. Okay, so sorry guys. Oh, okay. They are where I expected them to be. I just couldn't tell because they are the same color. All right, so cool. That is what I'm expecting. I'm gonna make this yellow. So these are currently stacked because they are in display block, and also the parent container is display block. So what I want to do is I want to make this column 1 flex so that things will just align next to each other. So if I go here and I make this deflex, now you see that all these elements are, instead of being blocked in, they are just being placed in from left to right. So that's kind of what flex does. And there's a lot of different directions that you can have as well, which is going to be set with an attribute called flex direction. So by default, the flex direction is row, which means that things are aligned in a row going from left to right. And so let me just show you. If I want to change the flex direction to row reverse, there is also a Bootstrap class for this. Oh, whoops, not this one. My bad. Okay, so this is the Bootstrap class that's predefined that'll make your flex direction row reverse. And so what that does is now, instead of stacking things from left to right, you're going from the right to the left. And so even though you see that the yellow one is first and then the red one is second, that yellow one is getting placed there first and then the red. So that will just flip everything along the x-axis. So it'll be helpful to think about the rows and columns as like an x-axis and a y-axis, especially when we start talking about flex, making the flex direction column. So currently at the moment, there's another 2 attributes that are really important to note when you're using flex, and they are justify content and align items. So this is where it kind of starts to get confusing, but once you play around with it on your own, it'll all become much clearer. So when the flex direction is in a row, justify content helps you align your elements along the x-axis. And I will show you what that means. So if we go to the default, flex direction is set to row, and we say justify content center, that means that you want to center your elements along the x-axis, like at the center of the x-axis. So now you can see that it's in the middle. Are there any questions so far? I can't see the chat window. So if anyone has questions, feel free to unmute yourself. Okay, so yeah, that's what justify content will do. It'll do it along the x-axis. And align items will align things along the y-axis. So now you can see that it is at the center of both the x and the y within this flex container. However, if we do flex column, so flex column is telling your flex box that you don't want to stack things in a row. You want to stack things from like top to bottom or bottom up in a column. And when you do that, the justify content, basically the y-axis and the x-axis, they get swapped. So in that case, if you want to align things now along the x-axis, you're not going to use justify content anymore. You're going to use align items. now if you use a line item center, you're getting it in the middle of the x-axis because you've swapped the two, if that makes sense. And then same thing with justify content. Now you've got it in the center. So there's a lot that you can do with Flexbox to lay out your pages. Yeah, just make sure you play around with it. It'll make a lot more sense. I think the most commonly used flex directions is probably just going to be row and column. I personally haven't needed the other ones, but you might need it. And I'll just give you a quick demo of column reverse. And so you see now that it's not going from top to bottom, it's going from bottom up. So that is Flex at the basic level. Any questions?
So all of this is just like in that class thing. It's not like you don't have to do any changes to like your CSS file.
No, you don't, because so these classes, so you see how we imported things here? Bootstrap has a lot of like CSS bundles that have been predefined for you. So all of these are basically just putting the CSS for you.
Cool.
Yeah, makes life easy. So yeah, and then one more thing I wanted to go through with Bootstrap is my favorite part, which are the pre-built components. So they're really easy to use. You can access all of their components on their website, and I'm just going to go ahead and do a modal. So this makes life really easy because all you have to do is hit copy, and then you go to your, oh, by the way, it looks like this. So you'll get a cool modal like this. All right, so all you have to do is copy this code, and then I'm just gonna put it here. Boop. Save it. And now you have a modal. So Bootstrap has all of these really cool components. They're really easy to use. Basically, you just have to button. You can change around the classes, change around the name of your modal if you want. But yeah, they give you a really nice template to use. And you can change right there. This is Bootstrap demo. So you can edit the content in there, and the classes that they put normally make it pretty easy for you to understand like what part you're editing. So if I save that, now I have I'm a button, you click it, and then it has the text and the title that I put in there. So that's just one component example, but they have a ton, and they're pretty fun to play around with. So I would highly recommend that you put some of these into your portfolio because they make it more interactive and just, you know, I guess a little cooler. So are there any questions? Oh, wait, there are things in the chat. Okay, there are also a lot of resources that are linked on this GitHub repo. So I have the Flex, the Bootstraps explanation of Flex linked here. And this is a really good document. Go and read that if you are still a little bit confused. And I have also linked the Bootstrap components, but pretty much everything on Bootstrap is pretty easy to find on their main website. So I would just go explore that. Okay. Any questions? Okay, that is all the content that I wanted to go through on Bootstrap. But I will be in the office hours chat if you do need any help later.
Even if you don't have any specific questions, feel free to come hang in office hours and just code. We can play some tunes and talk and like just chill in the office hour Zoom if you guys want, and then we'll be there with help if you need it.
Will be our little coding session.
Alrighty. Right on time. So, all right, thanks guys. We'll be in office hours.
Okay, so now we're going to publish our website to GitHub Pages. So I haven't actually done, this is still the starter code. I haven't really done anything for my website, but yours I'm sure has like a few more things than mine. But the first thing we want to do is in order for GitHub Pages to work, we need to make sure our like index HTML file is in like the base level of our project and not in one of these folders. And so I think everyone's website, wherever your website is located, so if you're just going with the bare bones one or if you're going with the Bootstrap one, make sure you move your index in style file to like the outside of the directory. And then I think you can just like delete it. Let's see. Oh, yes. So just make sure that they're in like the in the half day folder. Otherwise, like GitHub won't really know what to do and it won't be able to publish it. So at this point, make sure you save your files. So make sure you do like Command S on both your index and index HTML and styles CSS files. So if it has like this little dot by it, make sure you hit Command S so you save it. And so now we are going to commit our changes. So let's see.
Quick note, if you have an image in that folder, you also want to move the image out.
Yes. Yeah, so anything that was in that either the bare bones folder or the Bootstrap folder, make sure it's in like outside of the folder now. Yes. So here we go. So now that you saved all your files, everything's good to go. Now what we're going to want to do is make sure that you are in your like Hackday folder in your terminal. So again, if you need help navigating to the terminal, if you're on Mac, you go to Spotlight, search terminal, you can open it. If you're on Windows, however you search for those things, I don't really know, but it's make sure you type in CMD. I don't know if they call it terminal, but I think they call it command prompt. Yeah, so navigate to your Hackday folder. You can type git status again just to see kind of what changes you've made. And then to add all those changes to get ready to be committed, you do git add dot, and that means git add like all. So now when you type git status, all of those files should be, oh, wait, hold up. Oh, yes, this is fine. All of them should be green. And then after that, you want to do git commit. And so I did all these steps, I think, in the setup period, but I'm just going over them again. But if you set up VS Code with your terminal, then you can just do git commit and type your commit message. So this would be prep and then make sure you save it and then exit out. And then you should see that it has committed them. And then at this point, you can push your changes to your remote repository. And so now we should be able to, is this it? So now you should see that your commit is on your like forked repository. So before I move on, does anyone have any questions about what I just went over with committing your changes? Okay, so it looks good so far. Totally okay if it's not, but let me know if you have any other questions. So now we're going to push all of your changes in this repository to to the GitHub Pages repository. And so first we need to make it. Now I've already made the github.io, like GitHub Pages repository, so I won't be able to, you can only make one. So I won't quite be able to like walk through every single step with you guys, but I'll try to make it as similar as possible. So go to github.com, you should be signed in, and then you want to make a new repository. And so in this repository name, you're going to want to, it has to be like this exact name. So it has to be your GitHub username. So for me, that's Price E. And then, oh, this is cute, .github.io. Now it's giving me an error because this already exists, but make sure that yours follows this format. So username.github.io. I'm going to add a test at the end just so that this will work, but don't add this at the end of yours. You can add a description like personal website or something like that. Make sure it's public, and then don't check any of these things. So once you're here, you want to create repository. And so now it's created. And at this point, let's see. Now back to your terminal, you should be in your projects directory. And then let's see, what do we got? Okay, so right here, this is kind of like Git stuff, but when you have, so you have your local repository on your computer, and then you have your remote repository on GitHub. And so you can actually set that remote repository to be something different. So right now, this remote repository is origin, which basically just means like where you got this from. But we can set a new remote repository by doing this command. So we can do git remote add, and then we just give it a name. So I'm going to call it website. And then in here, we can actually, I think we can, yeah. So back to your username.github.io repository, you want to copy this link like that. Oh wait, no, never mind. I take that back. Well, you can still take this link. I'm going to copy this link because it has all the stuff I want. And then you're going to want to paste it here. You just want to delete that .git at the end. But essentially, you want it to be, github.com/your username/your username.github.io. Ignore the test part on my end. So you run that, and then if you do git remote-v, you should see that website or whatever you named it are listed as like remote repositories you can push your code to. And so first of all, I'll stop there. Let me know if you have any issues with this, or if you want me to go over it again. Okay. So far it looks like everyone's good, which is cool. Totally fine if you're not, but So once we have set up this remote repository that is connected to our GitHub Pages site, so the github.io site, then we're just going to want to push to it. So it would be git push that name that you named it, so website, and then master, which basically just means like push it to like the main part of it. So we'll do that, and then when you go to that github.io site, you should see all your stuff here. Now, I don't know how long it takes for your GitHub pages to actually be published from when you create that repository, but if you go to that website, maybe after an hour, maybe it works now, I don't know how instant it is, you should see your website that you have been making. So yeah, that is pretty much it. Do you guys have any questions, or do you guys have any problems or errors with doing this? Oh, well, that's pretty much it for the technical part of this workshop. Do you guys have it before we end? Do you guys have any questions for the whole group to ask? We'll also have office hours after this if you guys have specific questions or want additional help or just to like hang out a bit. Okay, cool. Terry, do you have anything to wrap up with?
No, just a quick thank you for all of you guys who came out today. I know that it was a small group, but we really enjoyed spending this time with you, and hopefully you guys learned a lot too.
Yeah.
Okay. If you guys have any other questions, we are still having office hours afterwards. Otherwise, you are free to go as well.